Right, guys, welcome back. This is the Above Average FPL podcast. My name's Adam, and as always, I'm joined by Baker. How you doing, mate?
Very well, mate. Very well. What, we got 5 days to go.
5 days to go. Exciting times. Last friendlies are happening. Community Shield. And he's just sorting out his lighting. Perfect. Yeah, everything's going a bit nuts. No one's overreacting to anything over in the FPL community on Twitter and stuff. No dramas whatsoever with that. But yeah, we're almost there. Lots and lots of tinkering, lots and lots of football being watched. And we thought, why not get the GOAT of FPL content to come and join us and see how he's getting on with his... I'll stand by that, Andy. See how he's getting on with his tinkering and see if he can help us a little bit as well as we go. 5 days to go. So, Andy, let's talk FPL. How are you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to seeing how many Spurs players I've got in my team by the end of this.
That's
right now it's 0, so let's see if we can improve on that.
Well, we'll start. We'll see what we can do. We'll see what we can do. I think the most important question, because obviously you've already been streaming today, so the most important question is, how was your roast dinner?
It was good. I'm very boring. I only really like chicken when it comes to roast. I know most people prefer beef or maybe pork, lamb, something like that. I'm just a chicken man. So it was good. Didn't have to cook it. It's always a bonus. It tastes better that way. So yeah, loved it. I'm fueled. I think one of you said I'm fueled now for the stream.
Refueled,
ready.
Refueled and ready. And hello to everyone in the stream as well. There are lots of you in here, 214 of you. And that's probably a mix of people who come and join us normally and people that you've sent over from your stream. So thanks for that. Appreciate that. Hope anyone that's new enjoys the conversation that we're having today. I guess just a couple of administrative bits, I guess, that I have to do. So if you haven't seen, the podcast is supported by Crypto Block Dan. So thanks to Dan for all his support for the podcast and YouTube. Really, really appreciate that. And we do have a mini league. So this number is wrong. I'm going to bin that off. There's more than that now. But the mini league is 1Feb93. So come and join us in the mini league. 1Feb93 is the code. And we've had some good people in the past. We had number 24 in the world last year. We had Jamie Piggott, who won it the year before that. He was in our mini league before he was in everybody else's mini leagues. So
and Andy's, wasn't it?
And Andy's. It was just
this
us.
is the perfect storm. Is literally the only two content creators at leagues he was in was us.
He's a good guy as well.
Yeah,
I really like talking to Jamie.
Really good.
He's a good guy. And yeah, just a shout out to our friends over at Lazy FPL. If you cannot be bothered to do any research yourself, these guys will throw out a 4 or 5 minute email to you once a week, and just before the deadline, giving you handy stats and data to help you make your decisions during the week and before the deadline. It's a free email, so sign up. The link is in the description below, or if it's not, it will be. And so make sure you sign up to that if you are lazy. I think we'll just leave that there. Andy, we weren't sure that you were going to come on actually after yesterday. I know we were talking about like thumbnails and stuff like that, and Baker sent this across to you. We went with a slightly different look, but we thought this looked good on you, to be honest.
Probably look better, to be honest. Probably makes me look much better.
I mean, that's
going to be everywhere now, isn't it? It's going to be absolutely everywhere.
You need to grow your hair out, man. That looks good.
It's a stupid question. Is that Haaland or is it someone else?
That is Haaland.
Yeah, okay. It has to be with that hair, doesn't it, really?
That is Haaland. Just the wig, though. The rest of it's you. The arms, you. Yeah. Everything else, you. Just the hair. Just the hair. But it's it's beautiful. I was like, what should I do? Oh, we haven't had Haaland and we got Andy. Should we? And no, maybe we should split them up. But it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful
thing.
Love it. We'll move away from that. How are you getting on? How close are you to having your team finalised now, do you think?
I'd say I'm there, barring a big injury. It's just the little things now. Do you know what I mean? Like, which bench defender do I have? That kind of stuff. Maybe I'm in an iron a little bit on goalkeepers. Like, is it worth the extra for Onana versus a 4.5? But unless something big happens over this week, most of it is kind of... I find a lot of it's just picking itself. I think if you're okay, I'm sure we'll discuss this later maybe, but if you're okay to go without Salah and Trent, the rest of it kind of starts picking itself a little bit. I guess 6.5 million midfielders, some people might have a preference one over another, but in terms of structure, it's there, I think. There or thereabouts.
Are you okay with going without Trent and Salah?
I think so, yeah. I think Trent, I definitely am, because I was talking about this on the stream earlier. It's like a combination thing. Like, I could easily have Trent and a cheap midfielder instead of Chilwell and an Arsenal midfielder. But who wants Dan Juma or Andreas Pereira and Trent rather than Chilwell and Odegaard or Chilwell and Martinelli? So I'm happy enough with that. Salah, I'm finding a bit more difficult because obviously, I'm like most of us, if you've been playing the last 6 years, you've probably owned him almost every single game week for those 6 years. And so it's difficult to let go of him. But I just don't, even if I owned him, I don't think I'd have the balls to captain him in game week 2. And so if I'm not going to do that, then what do I really need him for? I mean, today, we were talking before we came on, right? Man City, a little bit less time over the summer. They've got to go and play the Super Cup as well before game week 2. Maybe having Salah for Bournemouth is not that bad, but it's just so much, redistribution of funds that I just don't think I'm going to do it. So I'm not that happy, but I've come to terms it's going to happen.
I definitely feel like I'm going to move towards a way where I want to just start moving players around to make that work. I don't feel comfortable not having Salah, and I think because Salah allows you to, it gives you flexibility to move around at the price, right? You can just sort of commit to 2 weeks and then shift around. I think you have to be relatively comfortable that at some point you might go against that. Because, I mean, if Salah comes out, scores 2 against Chelsea and then scores a hat-trick against Bournemouth, you're not transferring him out in game week 3. That's not happening. I think if you can get over that and you can be pretty comfortable with shifting him on, I'm going to find it. I'm trying to build drafts around having Salah in there as and then being comfortable that I can move off the money. And I was pretty similar with like Trent a couple of weeks ago, but I've kind of called on Trent and now I'm thinking more Salah myself. That's kind of where I'm at.
The only thing I've kind of looked at, obviously Salah's so expensive, you can literally go to anyone else you want, and then that will give you the money to upgrade your forward or whatever to whoever you want. The only thing when I looked at that is there's a lot of money left over, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But again, that's another transfer then to put that somewhere else, and it might be 2 transfers to distribute it to where you would have it if you started without him. So it's not just then like 2 transfers, it's then like 4. And it might not make a difference. It might just be upgrading your bench, in which case, if you're not using it, it doesn't, it's not going to be a massive difference maker. But that's the only extra thing I've kind of considered is I can go from Salah and João Pedro to, Fernandes and whoever, Watkins. But then there's like 2 million left over that's not being used. So that's the only other thing I've kind of considered. But I would never try and talk anyone out of owning Salah. Obviously, he's just... There's a sneaky
little route to KDB as well if you do have Salah, which you wouldn't even consider if you didn't have him.
True.
And then I'm not saying that he's going to be the one, but City's first 7 are good. They are all good. So it's just an option there, really. I don't know whether that's just pining your hopes on one player that isn't a Salah or a Haaland is probably not the wisest thing in the world. But KDB came on today, got an assist, and away we go. You never know.
There's going to be some double down there. There's going to be some double. Even if it pays off, there's going to be if it pays off, then people will think, well, I've got some money in the bank here. I could actually chase another one, and I can go KDB because no one's getting to him either, and they can go again. Or if it doesn't pay off, there's still that bit that will tinker with you of, oh, maybe I can make it back on this one. I think everyone needs to sit and look at it. I do think it is relatively available to do the Moat one. I think we've now got some really good assets that and João Pedro makes a big, if he's on pens, which it looks like he is, certainly when he's on the pitch, then you add in we've got so many penalty takers that are like less than 7 million, really. Bumo, you've got Eze, you've got João Pedro there, so you can effectively have like 18.5 million quid for 3 penalty takers. That's quite rare.
Yeah.
It's quite rare for a season to have that kind of option. So I can definitely see a world in which people are now showing drafts that have Salah in, and I'm not like, ooh, it's a bit icky. But then you do think it's the Watkins, it's the it's the Bruno. It's tough.
The thing for me is he's just. You never get a Salah that's only 25% owned. And I really, unless something major happens, I don't think that's going to go up a huge amount by Friday. You're right. More and more people will kind of talk themselves round to it. Maybe it goes to 30%, something like that. but he's not going to suddenly be 60, 70 like we've known over the last few years. So having a 25 to 30% owned Salah against Bournemouth at home, especially if the captaincy goes right versus Haaland, like it's huge straight away, and people will then panic and get him in. And that's actually more what I'm worried about. Is I think if you go without him in game week 1, the chances are you will build a squad where you can't get to him in 2 moves. It's going to be three. It's going to be 3 or 4. So that's what I'm a little bit more worried about. But I just think I've heard Praz talk about this before. Like, you just got to commit. If you're not going to go with him in game week 1, you cannot have him in game week 2. You've just got to roll with it, unless Haaland gets injured, and then obviously then the game just breaks. So
you just get Kane in if that happens, right?
Well.
Yeah,
here we go.
Like
How long did it take? 10 minutes.
If that, mate, if that. What we like? Oh, 11 and a half minutes. Not bad.
There it is. Harold. So, yeah. It's not 100%. I do wonder, we're doing this Sunday night, and obviously Liverpool play tomorrow. So we've virtually got everybody else done. Tottenham have got another game against Barca on Tuesday night. And if Kane gets, imagine Kane goes to Barca and scores 4. that will still make some interesting tinkers, but Salah tomorrow night, I think there'll be a lot of eyes on it.
Yeah, I think so far he's got a lot of return. I think it's 7, but only 1 goal. So if he could go and get 2 or 3 tomorrow, that might make a few more people kind of rethink, I would say.
Well, how much do you react to pre-season? Because I've seen a lot of takes recently that people are saying, "Oh yeah, pre-season doesn't matter." I'm like, I understand everyone says pre-season doesn't matter, but it definitely, however you play this game, it 100% does. So if you're in the analytics world, then it's definitely changing X-Men's all the time. So it's pre-season, wherever what you see with your eye doesn't work, what you're seeing come out the other end of it definitely gets affected by all the predictor models, all the ownership models, all of those things. So it does cause a huge influence on the game, even if you don't take what you see from it. But do you take a big amount from pre-season?
Yeah. I think it's one of those things in FPL. Like, people act as if it's black and white, but it never is. Like, if Salah goes and scores a hat trick tomorrow, that doesn't, maybe subconsciously it does, but that shouldn't have any effect on whether I pick him, because I already know he's great, right? I already know hat trick potential against Bournemouth at home in game week 2 is massively high. Like, I'm not naive enough to think that he's just a bad pick now. That's not the case. But yeah, so a player scoring lots of goals doesn't tend to persuade me. Like Harry Kane scoring 4 today. I mean, we know the guy scores goals, right? If he's in the Premier League, he's going to score loads of goals. But minutes, fitness, positions and stuff like that. Like Chilwell, for example, I think one that has gone massively up through pre-season. One, because he's fit, right? This guy like Reece James is just not always fit. So that's a big thing. Also, his positioning, where he's playing on the pitch, he's quite high and wide on that left side. We've seen him cut in, underlaps, shoot, etc. I think he's already scored. So all those things look good. So that definitely plays a part. But I think it is just formation, who's getting used a lot, like who's actually fit. Like Alvarez, for example, started against there. I think he's played the most amount of minutes for Man City. I think there's one other player as well that's kind of close. So those are the kind of things I would look at. So it's not that it doesn't affect me at all, but the fact that I think Fernandes has scored once in pre-season, maybe, I don't care about that really. I don't, that's not going to put me off owning him. So yeah, like João Pedro, for example, today, taking a penalty when Gross is on the pitch. I think most people thought maybe Gross would be penalty today. That's another bit of information we now have that we didn't have before today. So it does affect things, but not like who scores and who doesn't. It's not a huge thing for me.
I mean, I don't know whether it's just mainly, and you can call this Tottenham bias and whatever, but we will pay attention more to Tottenham than anyone else. But because of the stark change in how we've actually played football in the last 3 or 4 weeks compared to, and look, opposition aside, right? It's West Ham, it's some Lion City Sailors, is that it? And then obviously Shakhtar today. Like, so opposition aside, it's polarizing. Like, it's so far different from what we've seen under Conte, Mourinho. I mean, whatever you want from Nuno. Like that for us, I mean, obviously we're all like hyped up now because of that. And I don't know how others are seeing that. I mean, obviously we're giving it the big one from where we are, but I don't know how others are viewing it. So from I guess from almost from an outsider view, how are you viewing like Tottenham?
Yeah, I think from an attacking point of view, I don't think everything I've heard and seen so far would make me think that Son is now better than Rashford, for example. I mean, you guys maybe tell me how he's done.
Oh no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But Maddison, for example, playing in a team that should be more attacking, looks like he's taking loads of shots. Sorry, not necessarily him, but the team is taking loads of shots. We know how creative he can be. His numbers at Leicester were really good. Now he's in a team that's better, and especially if Kane stays, he's got much better players around him. And so suddenly that is kind of a tempter. But then at the same time, you're always comparing him to other players at the same price or less. So whether he kind of has jumped up enough where I think he's got to be in my team. But I think when you start looking at same price points, like Maddison versus a Foden versus a Grealish, then it gets interesting because Foden, yeah, great if he plays, but doesn't always play, as we saw today. So I think Maddison's probably been under-talked a bit. I think there is generally excitement around Spurs. I just think the players don't necessarily fit into our teams, really, right now. Like a defender, maybe, but then you've got Estepinian, Gabriel, Chilwell. Like, it's just hard to make a case for one. So I'm kind of, I think a bit like Chelsea, to be honest, I'm quite excited about Spurs this year. I just don't know how well they fit in for game week 1 necessarily. Like, do I want to spend $1 million more on Maddison, or do I just want to get Eze or Matoma or Mbeumo, etc.? It's just the situation in game week 1. That's all.
It's a tough one. I mean, I watched today. Yeah. So let's go the bad. Son, like, massively isolated on the left, like way too wide on the left. If anything, what you were seeing was Son out on the left. A lot of times, Udogie would come inside him for a start, but Maddison was always inside him. They look to Maddison like he must be vocal. He must be so vocal, either on the pitch or on the training or wherever he is, because like it's genuinely like he's been there 10 years and he's a magnet for the ball. Like they look, think I'll give it to him rather than do something myself. There were times today where we overplayed. I think that first half, and it was just like give it to Maddison. Hope he'll work it out. But everything, he was just everything. Yeah,
he's going to be great this year if he can stay fit. I think he's not necessarily a player you're going to get 35 plus games out of, but when he's on the pitch, he does. Yeah, heavily involved.
You might find it easier with only one game a week as well, though. That's the thing. Yeah. So I mean, and there are options, right? We do actually have some options. They're not obviously better than Maddison, but there are some options to move players around in that structure as it stands. So
there's a question in the chat saying about, is he a 90-minute man? Like, I think he is. I think he is a 90-minute man in the right conditions. I think there is, we've got so the 2/8s at the moment are Maddison and Sarr. I expect that to be there. Sarr 4.5, by the way, and could have easily had a brace today. If you're looking for a 4.5, you don't think you're max out on Spurs, which I don't think many will as a mid. But yeah, I think it'll be those two. When we had the extra inch guys on the other week, they were pretty adamant that's what it'll be, is more of a runner, more of a box-to-box midfielder for the other 8, and then the other one's a prime creator, which makes it look a bit like he's like tip of the diamond more than they're a twin tens. He just was involved in everything. Porro potentially might not start, and if he doesn't, then he's got corners both sides, which makes him even better. Again, that's another thing which is negative towards Son, is he's now lost some corners. Maddison just looks gold for me. Like you say, it is that I'm paying £1 million extra for a guy that hasn't got pens compared to the other ones, but it's so hard to think that he's not going to have goal involvement.
Well, I've seen that. I mean, you guys would have definitely seen and looked into this more, but I've seen a few heat maps, and a lot of the time, not necessarily the most advanced player, but he's right up there, right? Like,
it's a twin forward. It's a twin forward.
I'd expect him to be getting possibly more shots off than he would have maybe at Leicester, possibly, like especially when he was playing central, not right or whatever.
They're like a pair of 9.5s, Kane and Maddison. They're neither. You wouldn't say either one was the 9 or the 10. They were like a pair of 9.5s today. He was always in the box. But we're just taking so many shots. Like, how many do you say, Adam? It was like over 100 shots, I think, in 3 games.
I've got a slide for that, mate. Let's go there. So there's this is all coming from like Tottenham website, because like one of the games didn't have the stats, but the West Ham game we had 32 shots on goal, 13 on target. Against the Singaporean people, we had 37 shots, 11 on target, and today we had 32 shots, 20 on target. So we've had 101 shots on goal in 3 friendlies.
Crazy, isn't it?
And we've had two sets of 11s in those first 2 friendlies, and then a pretty settled one this time around. I think that's important as well. And Ange did speak to rotation for Barca, so I wouldn't worry too much about too many players getting tired legs and stuff. But he just said those that have had a lot of minutes. I mean, he said those that have had a lot of minutes in pre-season so far are waiting until Tuesday. Like, even though he's only given like even minutes to everyone, but yeah, I mean, this is what I mean about the stark difference in how we're playing football. But yeah, lots of shots. And I think go on.
Sorry. Yeah, one of the nice things about Maddison as well is he's quite low owned. Like overall, he's only 12%. And I did a thing with Certout the other day where we looked through like 650 teams that were sent to me. And obviously, that's a small sample, but that's a lot of engaged managers, right? They're the kind of managers that are constantly tinkering, that are probably going to be closer to the template. And Maddison was only 4% owned out of all those teams, so he's a big differential. And I do think if you're spending 7.5, there is an argument that he is better than the Man City midfielders because of minutes as much as anything else. And like you said, set pieces and stuff like that. So yeah, I do like. I don't think he's going to be in my team, but I think he's one of those players that come game week 3. You know, we're all on like Fernandes and Marseille and Odegaard. It's a very easy downgrade if money's needed, or if those players aren't performing as they, we were hoping they would.
Yeah, you can see quite a few, maybe Bruno to Maddison.
It's like a million saving
tough
as
well. Forest at home in game week 3 for United. I mean, it's a good run for Spurs.
Yeah, I'm saying after that, it's gonna have to be after that.
Yeah,
it's gonna be after that. Can we do that? Can we talk about Bruno and?
Can I just ask you? Sorry, can I just ask you one question? Just because you're Spurs fans, and I want to know. And like we were on Spurs, just before we move on to Bruno, what about your defense? Because I think I'm a bit more worried about the defense, but I also quite like the look of Udogie because he's only 4.5, and also he covers like Estepinian's a player I see a lot talk about having to get rid of after game week 3, but he covers game week 4 and 5 pretty nicely. Like, do you think he's going to be nailed and it's Porro that's got to worry, or do you think there's going to be a split?
Destiny's so good, mate.
Right. Today I've already got this prep right. So today, 61 attempted passes today. Every single one of those was successful. 6 out of 6 ground duels, 2 out of 2 dribbles complete, 3 interceptions, 3 tackles, 1 key pass. He's got goals in his locker.
One big chance missed.
But he's got goals in his locker, right? He scores.
What I'm saying. He was inside Son. In that move, they make a lot of underlap. Although they're playing inverted, they then go forward and make a lot of underlapping runs. Royal and Destiny got in the bench in the box a lot. I
mean, it's so adaptable. It's so adaptable though, because they can go outside, but they're given freedom to go inside when it requires it. So
yeah, they definitely second half today didn't stick as much. So first half it looked like almost, and said as much. He said it was like they were basically doing what I told them to do first half, and then second half I was like, do what you think you should be doing almost a bit more. And you saw a lot more Son came inside, didn't just stay outside. You saw a lot more Destiny go outside. So maybe we're saying Son was completely isolated, but maybe it would tell them he doesn't want that much from them. But yeah, Destiny looks a top player. At 4.5, I think he's a fantastic long-term guy. And I think there is, if you're looking for the deeper bench type situation, I've quite often looked at like a 4th defender that was a 5.51, and I am now tempted to say I'll have a 4.5 defender and João Pedro. The question is then, if you do put João Pedro in your team, is who do you leave out? Because you can't not play him.
No, you've got to play him game week 1. Have to, yeah. If you got him in your team, it'd be crazy to bench him.
But I'm starting to like that more, that I'll have 1 extra on the bench. I have 2 good bench options and then 4.0. No Destiny. Yeah.
What do you think?
Wouldn't put you off it.
What do you think about your defense in general, though, in terms of clean sheets?
Right now, terrible, because they played Ben Davies at left centre back, but Van der Ven was there today. Gave me something to pick earlier. That he does look like a maniac. Like him and Romero are both just madmen. Even at a friendly today, Romero tried to get sent off at least 3 times.
Yeah, he did.
That doesn't surprise me.
He did. He went. I did see the one. He went just absolutely flying through him just on the halfway line, like completely pointless.
I must admit, the Bumo situation next week, would you be surprised Van der Ven or Romero, one of those, concedes a penalty next week at Brentford on a break?
Probably not.
Hopefully they do. Hopefully.
Yeah, do we think we get many cleans early on? No, but do I think Van der Ven and Romero are 2 better centre backs? They're the best 2 centre backs we've had since Toby and Jan, and we were pretty good under them. I just expect us to have so much of it. I think we'll have more clean sheets just because I think we'll have so much of the ball.
Yeah, and those, like you said, long term, there's just some nice fixtures that he covers. So, yeah, I think we might discuss it later. I'm finding the bench defenders a little bit difficult, but Udogie definitely up there for me.
It does make your decision a bit easier as well if you put Udogie, because you're like, well, I can just put him on the bench. Whereas some of the other guys, I'm like, oh, I'm not so sure. And it does tie in quite nicely on that Estupiñán type thing of maybe just keeping Estupiñán for them there. Man United then. Rashford, Bruno in.
Yeah, basically. I know some people are maybe thinking, will De Bruyne, will Fernandes be, deeper than Mount? Maybe Mount might be the one to go for 1.5 less. But I want to see that a bit more before I commit. I think things could go wrong quite quickly with the opening fixtures if you don't have Fernandes. We know Mount's going to get really good minutes, but there is a chance at some point maybe Eriksen plays in one of the games instead of him, whereas Fernandes 100% is going to be on the pitch, penalties, etc. All the things you already know. So I think Man United might have some other options at some point. Whether or not it'll ever get to the point where we use a spot on them instead of Fernandes or Rashford remains to be seen. But if you need someone cheaper, obviously Mount and Antony are both there. But I find it's a bit like Arsenal. I just think with 2 really good home games in the first 3, it's really difficult to look against them. And one thing you said earlier about, if you've got Salah, you can go to anyone. Well, apart from De Bruyne, you can literally go to anyone from those 2 Man United players, apart from Salah, obviously, like literally anyone, because that's just how the pricing is this year. So they just feel like safe starters. Like we're talking about Maddison, he should be great. How will Spurs actually do when the Premier League starts? Obviously remains to be seen. Whereas you kind of know what you're getting with those players, and they're so easy to downgrade. If I need Maddison later on, even if he goes up a little bit, I'm still going to bank more than 0.5 million. So, yeah, I find out unless Salah comes in, they'll both be in 100%.
My only thing of watching Bruno is I think that's the danger always of watching Bruno in highlights, because this happens every single game, is that you pick Bruno effectively for those 3 or 4 moments that he has during the game where he just decides, I'm going to go up top, I'm going to be the presser, I'm going to be the number 9 suddenly for a second and do the stuff. If you pick him for the other 87 minutes of the game, it's really easy to talk yourself out of it that says, hey, he's too deep, he's just hitting long passes, he's not doing this, that, or the other. But he does find a way to get points. I do worry about this. Do you worry about this yellow cards? See the game today and you saw these things.
A little bit, but I feel like footballers aren't that stupid. They're going to have to realise pretty quick that the referees are serious about it. I think you watch today's game, then you're going to get yellow carded. So he might pick up a few early on. It's a bit of a worry, but you would hope pretty soon he would rein that in. I think he was one of the first names I thought about when I saw the yellow cards coming out today. But I don't think it'd be enough to put me off. I do think what people are talking about with Mount could be a slight issue. Like Mount probably would be the one. If one of them is going to go forward, it probably would be Mount. I think off the ball stuff is one of the reasons he's been brought in.
Yeah.
And we could see that kind of almost quarterback role where he's the assist before the assist. If you saw one of the clips going around social media was his pass to Garnacho. And obviously he wouldn't have got any points for that, even though it was an incredible pass. That's just, how FPL works or whatever. But I still think there's enough to start with him. But I think you're much more likely to move off him than Rashford, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Later on.
Yeah, I think so. Carl Anker did a really good video. It's one I watched on TV. It's only 10 minutes, about this, how they're moving in this transition team we talked about and so forth. And hey, they're looking to score goals. They are looking to score goals.
Talking of goals though, let's just the Haaland situation. So I'm assuming we don't expect him to start game week 1. I expect Rashford to probably
out 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's out.
Oh, is he actually injured?
Yeah.
Well, that's ruined that question completely, then, isn't it?
Yeah. He picked up an injury or saying, can Atalanta train in? I get the feeling from the wording that he's almost fine, but now he's behind match fitness, so it's going to be game week 3-4 probably till you see him.
Okay, well, scratch that then. Let's move on.
Rashford's going to play up front, yeah.
We have one more on Man
Sancho
United.
could play that.
We have one more on Man United, which is, do you have a Man United defender? Or do you have a Man United keeper?
Yeah, I've got Onana, but I don't know. I don't feel like Man United defence is essential. I think sometimes it gets talked about as though you cannot go without them. Ultimately, they do have Spurs away, Arsenal away, Brighton at home, first 5, which are not easy. I think if I had Luke Shaw, it would really depend on who I could rotate him with. So do I have someone good for game weeks 2 and 4? If I do, I'm probably okay with Luke Shaw. With Onana, it's a little bit different because goalkeeper tends to be a position we don't use transfers on. And I think overall, if you start looking like first 9, first 12, first 13, it's pretty good. But it could be a situation where they don't keep enough clean sheets early on, people start to sell and you lose value. That's my only kind of worry. So I am on Onana, but I am questioning whether the 0.5 saving and probably earlier better fixtures could be worth it. That Shaw's not in my team at the moment. I've kind of taught myself in, like a lot of people, to chill well.
The Suarez is going to be. I think that also the Suarez is 4.0s are about as well, isn't it? Before, you know,
goalkeepers.
Like Ariola and like Matt Turner, and
if Matt Turner goes to Forest, everyone's seen the Pickford and Turner or the Johnston Turner things, and you're like, I can save $500,000 there. I don't know where I'm spending it if I do it, but I'm like, it suddenly looks really nice. I can't help myself, like get myself in so much Twitter stuff with like people just keep asking, oh, honest BPS, and I'm like, well, it's really easy. It's actually really easy to calculate goalkeeper BPS because it's like 6 for playing. He now gets either 4 or 6 for passing every time, and then you just add the saves in and stuff. But hey, like none of this actually matters if they don't clean.
I guess as well, it's going to be a almost new way of playing because he's come in because Ten Hag obviously wants to play more from the back, have a bit more control, and also obviously a keeper that can spring attacks as well. But part of it's going to be building up from the back, and tried that a few early games last year, didn't go well. Obviously, then went a bit more route one, like longer balls, and that might be an issue early on, right? It does take time to kind of adapt to a new way of playing. There's only so many minutes they've had together during pre-season, so I think I said this on Twitter the other day. I think Seb said it as well. If De Gea was still there, his ownership would not be as high as Onana. So then you've got to ask yourself, do you think that Onana coming in is going to improve Man United defence straight away? I would say probably not massively. And I think, yes, they got the most clean sheets last year. But when you start looking at expected goals conceded and stuff like that, they weren't at the top and they probably did overperform on clean sheets. So the chances are this year, even if the defence does improve a little bit, the clean sheets probably still come down. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, definitely do.
Yeah. So I've got him, but I am kind of questioning myself, why do I have him? I don't know. I think sometimes people like, okay, Spurs away and Arsenal away is not great. I've seen a lot of people on, say, Jason Steele instead, but they've got to play Newcastle at home, Man United away first 5 weeks. So is that much better? I guess not. But also, he's 0.5 million cheaper. So then you've got to add where you can use that. But I agree with you. It's getting to the point where I'm struggling to use this money apart from just improving the bench.
Like, I can't go Steele. Like, you watch him again today. He swings a foot.
Howler, I heard, right?
Howler, and then gets pulled at half time. Gets pulled at half time. But you can't.
Do you not think that was a plan change?
It doesn't matter if it is a plan change. It means that if he wants to give him like, why does he want to give the other guy minutes? Well, he could, because he could just get rid of him. So I think if you do Steele and Pickford, or something like that, Steele and Johnson, like you're suddenly 2, then you're like, well, I'm still spending 9. So like, but I guess there is that question as well. Is it still better to have 2 4.5s than it is to have the 5 and a 4? Isn't even better if you get a 4 in there because these fixtures are not good. Like, I know I've seen lots of these ones, but I've not seen actually if anyone plugs it in. It's very difficult to bench a Man United keeper, but it's an interesting one. And what we don't know what if we get that? What if, Andy, what if you get the info live on stream next Friday at about 5:30 that Ortega's starting?
Well,
what do you do then?
I guess you have to go Ortega. You've got to take that risk then that he's the new keeper. You can't, like, if he starts again, like today he starts, okay, well, he's the cup keeper, right? FA Cup, League Cup. Him starting today, is it that big of a thing? Probably not. But if he starts Friday, then I think you have to go for him. I mean, it's easy. You go 4.5 on Ortega, don't you? You just take the risk. Simple as that. And if he doesn't play, you just pay your 4.5. That's what I would do, 100%.
What if Matt Turner's there as well, and you just have 4.0 and 4.0, and we're back in the game?
But like the upside of having a £4 million City keeper is so much higher than like Turner. Like even if I like you said, everyone's been putting out on Twitter. I worked it out what the rotation was. Even if, like, say you go for a Pickford, you're only playing Turner 1, 2, 4 times in the first 12. So the upside of potentially getting Ortega is much higher than those few games.
No, but what I'm saying, why don't you go Ortega and Turner?
Oh, I don't think I'd risk it that much, just in case. That'd be my initial instinct. Like if we knew 100% he was first choice, or we knew that Edison had an injury, then maybe I'd risk it. But I think for the sake of 0.5, I'd rather have that safety net, I think.
I feel like last time we spent loads of time talking to keepers, but I like it. I love how much time we all spend talking on keepers before the season starts. Did you?
And we'll all get the wrong 4.5 anyway.
Yeah, definitely. While we're here, can I just say, and I have been looking at it, there's like 750 people in here today.
Like, we
normally have like 200 people by this point, and we've got 750 people in here. So, hello to all of you. We aren't ignoring your messages in the chat. We are seeing them and trying to include them in the conversation for sure. Someone's already saying Edison's needed. Baker, somebody's saying that they like your kitchen. There's all sorts of great chat.
I've been shoved back downstairs, so I've got family over. Which somebody has mentioned that part though, that when I get moved down to the kitchen, the other issue though is that nobody else can go in the kitchen. We've got 2 adults and 2 kids staying, and 3 dogs. Nobody can go out.
Nobody's allowed out. And if you are,
they're all dying of thirst.
If you are enjoying the content, make sure you hit the like button today. And if you want to see more from Baker and myself, we do an off the weekend podcast every Sunday evening, apart from next week when we'll do Monday, where we cover all the games, go through what we learned from the games, what we can take from the games, what we can do looking forward. As early as possible. We normally do it probably just after Andy does his knee-jerk stream. So you can always go and watch Andy and then come over and watch us. That'd be great. It sounds perfect. Exactly. So yeah, thanks to everyone in the chat today. Hope you're all having a good Sunday. So where do you want to go next?
One more bit on keepers. Pickford or Johnson?
You were saying just there about Steele and Verbruggen. Are we 100% sure Johnson's never going to lose his place to Guaita?
He was so good yesterday.
Yeah, I saw you watching
it, but what I liked was after it was like he was full on the fist pumps. He was banging his chest. Like I really liked that he was really trying to keep that clean because it didn't matter. They're 2-0 up in a friendly, because clearly the defenders didn't care because they didn't bother to defend a corner, but that's Palace. Me and Adam had that conversation afterwards, and I actually searched my tweets for set piece Palace, and I found like about 20 tweets where I just kept telling myself, "Don't pick a Palace keeper because of set piece Palace." They're so crap at it.
Yeah, I think I don't know with John. Like goalkeepers in general are difficult because we don't want to use transfers, so we do think longer term. But still, psychologically, you want to pick up some points early. And so if I look at their first kind of 5, like 3 are away. And then one of the home games is Arsenal. So I feel like Pickford early on is probably slightly better. The other thing is, Palace defence is better than Everton. I'm not saying it's not, but Palace numbers are really good last year. And I'm just a little bit sceptical about how they did that. And I just don't know if that'll be the same this year. So I think, I don't know. I think for long term, it's probably Johnston. But there's that psychological element where I want to pick up the clean sheets a bit early. And I think maybe that's Pickford. Yeah. And then you just hope you can continue that.
Yeah,
got them on screen there. Yeah,
I did just flash them. I mean, I don't have the Everton ones on screen here. I think I chopped the image around. So,
or Pickford
for Pickford,
they're good though. They're good though, in there.
Yeah, it's Fulham at home, Villa away, Wolves at home, Sheffield United away. I mean, to be fair, they've also got quite a few away games early on, and one of their home games in the first 6 is also Arsenal. So it's not that much of a difference. I don't expect. I think the Sean Dyche goalkeeper 4.5 thing is kind of dead. Like he's just not a good defensive manager. At least we haven't seen that for a long time now. So I'm not expecting Everton to massively improve either. I think if you could assure me Johnston was not going to lose his place, I'd probably say him.
Yeah. Anyone see? Again, I don't know how much to pick up from it, but Tarko came off with a precaution type thing, but it gets you a bit icky, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about Branthwaite, aren't they? Would he come in and play a role? Generally, I don't like the Everton defense for what it's worth.
Yeah,
it's not good.
I'm saying
I might have a cheeky space on the bench for Branthwaite. I don't mind it.
You like the old Branthwaite?
Well, good season last year, and you never know.
Where are we going?
Well, we can have a look at the updated goals and cleans and stuff like that if you want, from 11-5, just see if anything's really changed from last week. Which not really is the answer, to be quite honest. Not loads has changed, but expecting City to score a few more goals, I think, is.
Look at those opening goals for Arsenal.
Yeah, that's why.
Just look at the goals for Arsenal either way. Like, where you can't go without 2. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm obviously Saka like everyone else, and then I've currently got Martinelli. Could be tempted to go Odegaard if I could find 0.5. But I mean, ultimately, the Jesus injury changed my structure a bit. I had Jesus and a 6.5 million midfielder, and then I went to Watkins, who's the same price. But then you got to find more money to get the extra Arsenal midfielder. So it did kind of put my structure out of whack. So I did consider not having the second Arsenal attacker, but I just don't think you can. Like the goals there, obviously, but just the fixtures in general are just too good. And we saw how good they were last year as well. I'd rather be on it and have to come off than the other way around. Do you know what I mean? You could miss so many points in that Forest game, and then you're already behind everyone else. Yeah. So Martinelli right now.
I mean, I think Saka and Rashford for most of us are just pretty done deals for the majority of us, unless you go Salah, and then it gets a bit more. But if you don't go Salah, Saka and Rashford look pretty there. But then you look at the next 3, and it's like I can have at least one on that 8 million or above, and then you start looking at 6.5s and so forth. So when I mentioned Maddison earlier, you look at it and you're like, well, if I go Maddison from the start, I either can't have a second Arsenal attack, or I can't have Bruno. And you look at those opening 3, and it's like, oh.
Yeah,
tough,
this is where that's what I was saying earlier. It's not that Maddison's bad for game week 1. It's just the way it all starts to fall together. It's like we're all the same, right? If we could have 8 or 9 midfield spots, that's exactly what we would do this year. There's just so many options. And I feel like you've just got to have that. I mean, probably Arsenal more than Man United because they'll score more goals. But also, if Man United score, it's more likely to be through Rashford and Fernandes anyway. Yep. So they're kind of so obvious. I think the only real discussion, I guess, with Arsenal is who is the second attacker you go for. I think for most people it's Martinelli, but I think we saw today exactly what I'm a little bit worried about, and that is he will get subbed early because they have got Trossard ready and waiting to come on. And his stats are better, but he just doesn't get as much minutes. So I think there is a bit of a discussion to be had. The only issue is Odegaard's 0.5 million more, and that's where people get a bit stuck. But if you think about today's game with all this added on time, in the end, Odegaard's played like an extra 26 minutes in one game. Obviously, he didn't get anything. He didn't get anything from the extra minutes. But in a different game where Trossard's come on in the 75th minute against Forest and Odegaard gets an extra 15, 20 minutes, it does start to add up. So that's the only reason I'm slightly hesitant on Martinelli. But I suspect in the end that 0.5 will be the difference maker. Are you guys the same?
I am. On that, I can't say that at any point in this preseason I've considered Odegaard. I just haven't. And it's a really good point on the minutes, and it's a really good point with the injury time that we're now seeing. Like, we're kind of expecting 100-minute games every game, aren't we? Really?
Yeah.
And you kind of expect in these games for Arsenal that they're going to be 2 to 3-0 up by the time it gets around the 70 minutes. So you do expect there will be some changes. I still think it's that age-old thing of those that score will probably stay on for a bit longer. So, like, there is a danger that you walk away with a 2 or 3 pointer because they're clean with Martinelli, but I do think you're getting a good 70 minutes out of him. Odegaard, again, it's hard to say he's deep when he's playing Man City because he's playing Man City, but he's doing a lot of the work, mate. Like, again today, like, no key passes, more time in the 6 than he was in the 8. Certainly he wasn't, getting up to being a number 10 at any point in the game. I think he had like 1 penalty box touch all game. I can't spend 8.5 million on that. I just can't. But like you, how do you not have 2 Arsenal attackers with those opening fixtures? I rate Martinelli.
Does Havertz put his name up at all? I mean, I know people will look at it and say that's a finishing thing, but like Jesus is a bad finisher, right? And we were all sitting here like creaming over Jesus a week and a half ago. Havertz is a bad finisher, and no one's really spoken about him. I mean, I know we're only talking like 3 hours since the game's finished, but an extra half a million there. He's 7.5, right? So he's going to get opportunities. He's going to get chances. I mean, in those first 3 games, but definitely there is. He's a transfer. He's a transfer out. That's the problem. He is a transfer out.
Yeah, but you've got Maddo there. You've got others there. That's fine. You've got Chelsea guys there. You've got all the different options you can be. But if you look at where he touched the ball today, he either touched the ball in the number 9 position, or he did loads of work in midfield. And you're like, well, that's what Jesus does. So the great thing about him as an option is that he is the easiest translation. None of the other players have to start doing different things. When we all know that when Nketiah plays, Martinelli is something like, oh God, I can't do this. It's switch in and switch out because this guy just wants to stay up top. We all know when Trossard plays, suddenly you've got nobody holding the ball up, but he'll do other things. Kai is the easiest way for them to continue to play in the normal way that they play. You just don't know if you need to have Declan Rice and Thomas Partey at home to Forest, do you?
Exactly. That was my thinking. Maybe Partey goes out, Havertz drops into that number 8, which is where everyone thought he was going to play when he first signed. And then who do you have up front to start unlocking that defence? You put Trossard there, maybe. That's my worry, is that they could easily just switch it up for the next 3 games. I mean, I guess you don't want to keep changing it around, but they're a team now that have got an identity. They know how they want to play. And if they do have to make one change up front, they'll cope with that pretty easily. So that's my main worry, is will he play? And like, he is kind of similar in how Jesus plays, but Jesus' numbers are just so much better than Havertz. Is kind of like, even though he misses, they both not great finishers. Jesus usually gets more chances to start with. So I don't know. Some of it is just his performances at Chelsea. It just never seemed to really work. And I just worry if that'll be the same at Arsenal. And I don't think he necessarily likes playing number 9 either. I don't think that's where he necessarily wants to play. So, yeah, I just wonder if maybe he played there today. Maybe a height thing, I don't know, just to have like a bit more presence up front. Whereas with Forest, you probably don't need that as much. That's my only worry, is who's going to start. That's it.
If Trossard plays false 9, I mean, Martinelli is just in for me, because and Havertz plays there, because you're like, well, the one that comes off is the obvious moves then become something like Smith Rowe on or Fabio Vieira on for Kai and Eddie on for Trossard. Suddenly, I'd be much, much more confident. So if we get, suggestion that Trossard's going to be predicted to play the number 9, I'm probably just going to go have Martinelli all day long.
Yeah, and it's 0.5 for just that bit of security. You kind of know what you're going to get with Martinelli. So, I think basically for me to go for Havertz, I would need more injuries. There's still 2 other. I mean, technically with Balogun, there's 3 other players that could play in that position with Jesus. No, I'm not saying Balogun's going to start. He's obviously not. But Trossard and Nketiah are definite worries for me.
Yeah, I mean, Mike's come out and said the lineup today was specific to City. I mean, I watched I watched most of the game, and they did look pretty robustly set up.
Yeah.
Particularly in that first. I mean, Haaland came off after 60 minutes or 55 minutes or whatever it was, and had no shots. He was just swallowed up with a deliberate game plan to swallow him up, and they didn't get much joy apart from a few pot shots. So they, that was pretty specific. So yeah, open up next week.
I've got to be honest. One thing today's again, like it's pre-season. City have had a shorter pre-season, whatever. But Arsenal defence, if you're having any doubts, like I thought that with Saliba, they just look great today, and they have now got that, like you said, that opportunity to put Rice and Partey and Odegaard, and then for other games where it's going to be a bit easier, put a more attacking player in there. So I think I don't necessarily think they can keep more clean sheets, but if you had any worries that they were going to drop off this year, it's just not going to happen. I don't think.
This is a big one. The answer is probably no, but does the Haaland thing today put any shadow of doubt on captaincy for you for next week?
No, but I got to be honest. You said earlier about does pre-season make you rethink? I did think today, like, started coming up with all these things. Well, they haven't played as they had to play Champions League, so it was so long before they got a break. Now they're straight back. They're already having to play Community Shield, which is a friendly, but it's still a little bit more intense than maybe other pre-season friendlies. But I just can't go against that ownership. It's just ridiculous. Like it's like nothing we've seen before. Like Salah's been permanent captain, but he's still never had these constant high effective ownership. And it's a newly promoted side. I know it's away from home. I know Burnley are probably going to be the strongest of the three, but it's just too much to go again. Well, and also, you could captain Saka, I guess, or someone like Rashford at home rather than away. I don't want to go into this season being battered by Haaland captain. That's all it is, honestly. It's an effective ownership thing as much as anything else.
Fair enough.
What about, so I think the positions, probably the only positions we haven't talked about. So Estupiñán and Chilwell, happy in those worlds?
Yeah, as boring as it is, I find it really hard to go for someone else. I mean, like, okay, it might be nice to have a City defender game week one instead of Chilwell, but it's not enough for me to rethink the team.
Should we put on screen?
What?
Andy's team.
Let's get Andy's team up.
So let's get Andy's
You've
team.
never seen this team before.
Let's just read it out just for everyone who's listening on a podcast. So Andy has Onana in goal, Gabriel, Estupiñán and Chilwell at the back. Bumo, Saka, Rashford, Odegaard and Fernandes in the midfield. Watkins and Haaland up top. Areola, Baldock, Kabore and Mubama on the bench.
I will say quickly, there's 0.5 left over.
I was going to say,
yeah. I will probably start with a 4.5 million defender instead of Baldock. Probably. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Because it almost feels too good to turn down, having so many playing fours this year, which we don't like. We usually get one £4 million defender. Sometimes they're Lundstrom, sometimes they're not. But this year we've got so many. It's almost like don't turn them down. But I do think for an extra 0.5, you do just get much better defenses.
Yeah.
So that is probably where that money will go, I would say. Udogie or Colwill or even Henry, someone like that.
Any Villa thoughts?
Yeah, well, obviously I got Watkins. I just think defensively, I'm a little bit worried that none of them will be nailed completely, just because they're playing a lot like a lot of teams now. This back three in possession. Someone for them, it's not inverting midfield, so it's going forward. And so it looks like Cash is probably the best, but at some point they could just play Konza Mings, Pau Torres, and have Luka Dean going forward. Or when Moreno's back, it might be him. Like I think he's the one that Unai Emery really likes, is Moreno. So when he's fit, so I'm just a little bit worried. Like presumably Pau Torres is nailed now, but Mings was so good last year for them. There's a lot of Villa fans that think he's not going to suddenly get ahead of him. So I just don't think it's worth it, especially when they've got 3 away games. I think it is in the first 6. Sorry. It's actually 4 in the first 6, and 3 of them are Chelsea, Liverpool, Newcastle. It's just not good enough for me, I think. And even after then, it's like it's Brighton at home, game week 7. I think one thing I've kind of toyed with is I think it's game week 8 and 9 onwards, the fixtures get really nice. And if Moreno's fit then, and we've got money to spend or we need to move off someone, then maybe I'll look at it then. But I don't think I'm going to start the season with a defender.
I've been playing around with 4.5, and I was thinking Powell. And I do think because good he is on the ball. But I was just going back and forth in my brain of this. If I knew Cash was nailed, I'd have Cash. And then I watched last night and I was like, hold on. Konsa always plays. Because actually Mings and Powell are both left-sided. There is a bit of an icky part on that one. But Konsa's right-sided. Diego Carlos wasn't in the squad again. And I don't know if it's injury, I don't know where he's not there, what the deal is. But I was like, hold on, Konsa, you either get Konsa at right centre-back, partially right-back, the tight space, or he plays right centre-back. And I'm like, maybe Konsa's the one in that centre-back world. But like you say, 4 out of the first 6, it's not, but they were so on it last night. They were so good. I watched so much football yesterday, considering I got visitors over, but they were so good. They were so on it. I mean, Watkins was just beastly, but and I think what's useful for Watkins, bearing in mind we've got this 100 minutes type thing, if Coutinho and Buendia or Diaby, whoever it is, Bailey, they've got 4 kind of creative weapons around him, or playing throughout the whole game, he's constantly going to get service. Watching last night made it very, very difficult for me to think I wouldn't have Ollie Watkins, but I almost feel like it's a waste not having more Villa, because they were really good.
I think you're right about Konsa, by the way. I think I saw someone else on Twitter, maybe FPL Villa, say the same thing. If they are gonna get rid of Cash and just have the left back bombing forward, then he's first choice probably to be that right-sided centre back in possession or whatever. And even if they are playing Cash, he's right-footed, like you said, and Diego Carlos just never seems to be available. So I think you're probably right. But when you say Konsa out loud as an FPL option, it just doesn't sound that exciting to me. So then you really need those clean sheets, and I just don't necessarily think they got the fixtures. Like you said, if Cash was nailed, or I mean, dare I say it, if Luka Dean was nailed before Moreno's back. Let's just say Cash. I don't want to get lynched in the comments. Let's just say if Cash was nailed, then suddenly 4.5, they are a very attacking team. They could get some clean sheets along the way. Maybe you do it, but Konsa just doesn't sound that exciting.
Just can't do it. But
yeah.
Do you not think if we all just go Colwill, that we're all going to have triple defence? Come through.
Possibly. I guess possibly Reece James comes in. I'm not. I'm still on the fence about Colwill. Part of me more thinks that he's obviously going to be first choice at the start because Badiashila's injured, and that he's so good that he'll just keep his place. But they have so many centre backs, and I said this on stream earlier that managers love having a right-footed right centre back, left-footed left centre back. But for years, that's not always been the case, right? There's been plenty of combinations where they've both been right-footed. So I don't think it's a case that just because he's left-footed, that means he can never be rotated apart from with Badiashile. So it's the only thing that slightly worries me about him. But you're right. Like, I've seen a lot of people considering triple up, which is mad. Because there's so much of the community that just don't want to back Chelsea at all because of last year. And there's other people thinking of tripling up. It's a nice difference.
Yeah.
I've been triple Chelsea before. It's painful. Like, I've just got scars from that.
Yeah. The other thing for me, like, I know this is going to sound crazy to some people, but the other reason I wouldn't necessarily want triple Chelsea defense is because they could have attackers at some point.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of people that want Jackson from the off. I'm a little bit more skeptical about that, but I definitely see the appeal at 7 million. And Nkunku's someone that's interested me pretty much since he came, or since the start of pre-season. Like when Jesus got injured, he was the one that went in my team before Watkins, which a lot of people would say was a mistake, and maybe they would have been proved right. We're never going to know now. But I don't want to block that off. Basically, I don't want to block even Sterling or Mudryk. Right now, I've got probably no interest in either of them. But at 6.5 and 7 million with those fixtures, that can very quickly change. Very quickly.
I was listening to FPL did a fireside with Michael Cayley. He does the double pivot pod, fantastic. And Alan was just asking him, just firing questions at him. One of the things he mentioned about Nkunku and Jackson is that they both are really good at passing. They're really good at actually not doing the final shot, playing somebody else in. It did make me think, well, I love Chilwell because all I've seen is him doing that overlap and getting the things. So I was like, I can see a lot of assists from that space. But Nkunku, you could just tell the way he talks is just special. A special player. What they're not sure on is, does he keep doing the part? Like, one of them is going to have to do the shooting. Period. And Zoff, the one I mentioned to us that with Nkunku out and Mudryk playing, the only thing about that is that actually could be negative for Chilwell, because Mudryk actually does play that bit wider, gets in a bit more of his position. So I think there's still a little bit more to try and hear from Chelsea, but we're not going to get much because they've got no more friendlies now.
Yeah, apparently it's a bit weird that, but yeah, it's the way they've set up. I just think with those fixtures and the quality of player, I'm ready for it. Like I don't. Like people say, we need to see how they do, but are you going to see much from Liverpool at home, West Ham away? Unless they absolutely smash both of them, then you kind of take the fixtures or you don't. But I do think there is. I mean, not that many people listening are going to be going triple defense, but there's always that leaving a spot open. Also, we should say they've signed Sanchez as well, so I don't think you can go there game week 1 annoyingly. But at some point, Chelsea might have a 4.5 million keeper.
Yeah.
So again, you might not want to block that spot off either. So that's the only thing I would think about with loading up on those defenders. But I'm if I was starting with 2 5.5s with one on the bench, I'd be very tempted for it to be James as a double up rather than a City defender. I think just because of minutes. Like when they're fit, they're both going to start. So yeah, very tempting.
I think 6.5 mid is the only thing we haven't discussed really. So
Mbeumo's king, isn't he?
Is he?
We're so biased.
We can't.
This is where you need people telling us regularly. It's so stupid, right? I even had to tell myself last week that it's so stupid not putting Mbeumo in because he's got Tottenham first game, when all I'm talking about is that we're not going to keep any clean sheets, and all I'm talking about is that we're going to concede penalties, and that we're definitely getting done down the left side, if anything, which for him coming in off the right is fantastic. I wouldn't put anyone really off Wissa or Mbeumo from what I'm seeing, but Mbeumo. What about no Matoma? So that means no Matoma and no Eze.
Yeah, I mean, again, like when I had Jesus, I had a second 6.5, and at that point I had Matoma as well. So the only reason I don't have that second one now is it's just a structure thing and needing those or wanting those two Arsenal attackers. I've kind of been on Mbeumo the whole way through, even like right in early preseason. It's just the penalties factor and no Europe for me, like, which is similar to Eze, but I think Brentford's fixtures are better and his underlying numbers are also better. The only it's a massive disadvantage now is Tony's not there, which is going to have an effect on how Brentford play. But I would hope that the extra minutes which Mbeumo should probably get now, like he was always pretty nailed anyway, but you'd imagine they might go up a little bit. Yeah. And the fact that he now takes over penalties will hopefully balance it out. And also, I just think Brentford are one of those teams where you trust the manager to, figure things out without Tony being there. It's not going to be as good, of course, but yeah, there's just too many positives. Whereas with Matoma, I mean, you've got a million Brighton attackers now. To be fair, none of the ones they've bought really compete with his spot too. Even if Kudus comes in, right, he doesn't really play left wing, but it's just the sheer amount that he can start moving things around, De Zerbi, especially when games are won, right? He can just start bringing them off. He's got so many options. And Eze, it's just for me, it's just I look at the stats a lot, like I'm sure you guys do, and the underlying numbers are just quite low compared to the others. And obviously he's got minutes, and with this, new extra time, he's going to play a lot, and he's got penalties. But I just like losing Zaha, I'm just a little bit skeptical about whether he can be better. I mean, he got 10 goals, 5 assists or something like that last year. So, or the other way around. I can't remember if it was 5 goals, 10 assists, 15 returns. I mean, that would probably be decent enough. He could get that again for 6.5. But that's why I'm starting with Mbeumo, basically. And I'm not a Spurs fan, so it doesn't put me off so much in game week 1.
We're only really looking like 8 weeks. We're everyone's looking like average 8 weeks anyway, rather than the full season. It's can Eze start better than Mbeumo? You've got to consider Elise's injured as well. I mean,
just watching Eze yesterday, mate, though, like, it's really weird, his positioning. So when they're out of possession, he plays number 9. Like he's the furthest presser. He's right up number 9. So if anyone like just flicks it on, you go, oh, Eze's playing number 9. He looks great. The second they're in position, he's basically number 4. Like he like everyone goes past him. Like they all ran past him, and he was never in it. Like all the attacks, he was never in it. You know, is once they slow down, they would go to him and he'd try and dribble around, do a few things. And obviously he's on all the set pieces. That's the big deal. And he can score magical goals because he's a brilliant footballer. But he was so deep at position, like he just wasn't involved. It was a part of it. I actually, a few times I was watching it, I flicked down just to see, did I miss a substitution? Is he gone? Like
that far away, was he?
He was that far off. The number of times it was like, oh, Jeff Schlupp and Edouard are mucking around up top and trying to attack. And I was like, oh, I didn't like it. But then the second they had the ball, he was pressing on like Conor Gallagher used to do. It was similar to that when he was at Palace, and he was like the highest presser. And look, Conor Gallagher was a really good asset. So maybe that's how it happens. But I do also think there's an opportunity where you could see 4 or 5 2-pointers from Eze. Whereas I do trust Brentford a little more. Again, watching them, they're such a weird team, Brentford. Like they had none of the ball against Lyon. They looked like they should have been about 8-0 down after half time. And then you thought after the game, you were like, well, Flecken didn't really make a save at all, despite the fact that they got completely dominated. And loads of times Wissa almost scored and the ball just came across and he just didn't get there. So it won't play out in any final stats, but he was in the right position all the time. And obviously Bumo, you didn't get to see because he went off after half hour. Does that bother you?
Yeah, I guess it is a bit of a concern. But Thomas Frank did say it was just a dead leg and they didn't want to take any risks because it's pre-season. So I think he'll probably be okay. I just think he is, because I've had him the whole time now, it's hard to kind of give him up. So as long as Frank says he's fine, he'll probably be there. I think on Eze, people are starting to kind of grind me down that maybe he's a bit better as an FPL option than I'm giving him credit for. So perhaps if I did need to go for a second 6.5, I'd maybe have him ahead of Matoma. But again, it's that Luton at home, even Wolves away. I'm a bit worried about how they're going to do early on. And then West Ham at home is not a bad fixture at all either. So I don't know. I'd almost start with Matoma and then maybe have a view to possibly switch to Eze later on. I think it's just hard to know what Brighton are going to do with so many, just it's a ridiculous amount of attackers they've got.
Kudus, I think as well, it's coming in.
Who, sorry?
Mohamed Kudus.
Exactly. So, again, I don't think he directly competes with Matoma necessarily. I don't think he's going to play left wing. But if he plays 10 or 9 or right wing, then, and he wants to bring on fresh legs, then Enciso, I'm sure, can go and play on the left instead of Matoma for 20 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is. So it's not necessarily that Kudus would come in for Matoma, but he does free up other players to go and play there instead. Yeah. So I agree. It's a bit of a minefield with Brighton. I would assume if he comes in, their best front 4 is Matoma, Ferguson, João Pedro, and then Kudus on the right, maybe. But still, there's so many players that can come on and play. I think Matoma's minutes are going to be worse than Mbeumo and Eze. I just think that will be the case.
It's so awkward, that João Pedro thing, isn't it? When you think about it, because if you put him in if you do go with an extra striker and put him in as the 5.5, say you took Matoma out and put him in, you're like, do I really want to be 3-4-3? Because I've then got to get it right. That's the thing. If you put João Pedro in, you've got to get it right because there's nowhere really to go unless you go Wissa. Whereas if you put
Calvert-Lewin,
okay, there is no chance. But if you do Matoma, you can easily go to one of the other ones. If you do Eze, you can go to one of the other ones. It's also not that hard to get up to, some of the other guys. Even a Mudryk might turn out to be an option. There's plenty around that place, whereas it just feels very punty, those strikers.
Yeah, I looked at a João Pedro draft where you swap him in for Watkins, you keep most of the rest of the team the same, and you just upgrade the bench. So you get instead of Baldock and Kabore, you have a Reece James, and maybe you'd be able to get up to a Man City defender. So then you've got a deep squad. So you play João Pedro game week 1 against Luton. And then maybe you play in game week 2 as well. But then when you get to Luton at home for Chelsea, then you're playing a 4-5-1. You're playing James and Chilwell and you're benching João Pedro. Like, you could look at that. But I think you've got to be a certain type of FPL manager to play the game with that kind of squad. Because it requires lots of choices over the bench. Like with the draft you just saw on mine, there's no choice. Baldock and Kabore on the bench, right? It's easy every week. So you've got to be prepared to bench someone like João Pedro, who's also on penalties as well. Like, I mean, when do you ever bench penalty takers? And also, obviously, it spreads the cash around a little bit more, so you're a little bit more inflexible if you suddenly want to go up in certain positions. So you got to be able to hold your nerve. But that is one way you could do it. It's kind of like Watkins versus João. It's like Watkins and a cheap bench versus João Pedro and a decent bench. Is kind of how I saw it. I'm like you. I wouldn't want to leave myself in a position where I've got to exit to Wissa or Calvert-Lewin. It doesn't sound great to me.
If I went Pedro, I'd just be looking to try and get Mo on my team. And then actually, this is the thing. You still got to find another 2 million.
Yeah, exactly.
So
then you're dropping Bruno.
And then you're dropping Bruno to a 6.5.
Yeah, so for my team, the way it's set up right now, it's Watkins, Martinelli, and Fernandes. So it's those three: Watkins, Martinelli, or Fernandes, or it's João Pedro, Salah, and Matoma. That's basically the difference, something like that. And
it's not bad either.
No,
way,
it's
is
not.
It?
It's not bad as long as João Pedro gets enough minutes. That's the key thing. If he does, then maybe you start like that. So you've got Salah for captaincy. It's how much you trust those minutes. And I just, like, Kudus could play where he plays. They could even, I don't know how often it would really happen, but they could even play well back in Ferguson. Like, it could be something he tries at some point. And that is the problem. It's like Man City light. And I say light because they're cheaper. That's all. It's just, it's difficult to know.
We've got a super chat just to cover that. Chintan, thank you very much for that. We covered Son earlier, and I think we were all in agreement that he's not going to be a pick as it stands from what we've seen so far. But wait and see. It may change. Somebody mentioned earlier, I had a question for you, Andy, about is Richarlison a lock for you if Kane goes? I guess it all depends on who plays that number 9. But
presumably it would be Richarlison, right? I feel like he would get a chance at least.
Yes, I think he would be the first point of call. But I think Son could play there.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing about putting someone in from Tottenham, so as soon as I put Kane in, I tried to do it earlier. I tried to put Kane in. I was like, I ain't putting Kane in unless I'm also putting Maddison in.
Yeah.
Like, I want both. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like I want both. And it would be the same. If I put Richarlison in, I want Maddison as well. And then you're like, there's no chance in game week 1 I can put 2 Tottenham spots in my team. It's rough.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't think Richarlison would be a lock, but it would be tempting to have an out of position like number 9, because I think last season it made people think a little bit differently about Richarlison, but it's a little bit unfair, right? He never got the game time, never got to play. I think if you got a run of games in number 9 in that Spurs team, bearing in mind this is a guy that's, hit double figures and more for Everton plenty of times in a much worse team, I'd be pretty tempted. But again, it just comes back to that. Is he definitely worth 0.5 more than all those 6.5 million midfielders we just talked about? And then it gets tricky, but he would be a massive differential compared to them. So it would be a bit tempting. I think for Spurs, I think it's just the first couple of fixtures. They're not awful, but they could just be better. And they're just enough to kind of put me off, I think. I
think they're nice just as wait and see fixtures.
Yeah, exactly.
We've said it for the last, we've said it the last few weeks, actually. Tottenham's a decent wait and see. You might miss a couple of returns in the first couple of games if we get off to a hot start, but then everyone will be on us by game week 3 anyway. So you'll want to find a way there somehow. So
that nice structure though, with like Martinelli, Rashford, Bruno, like you can go where you want.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I wish it was more exciting. I wish someone could talk me into not doing it, but it just feels like at this point they're just picking themselves. They just really are, and because of the way this is what I was saying. Like, people thought I was moaning. I'm just commenting on it really. But when the game launched, everyone was saying everyone's at the same price. That's going to create variety, but not really, because the better players will always come to the top. So even if you do save the money by going for like a Rashford to a Maddison and save 1.5, what the hell do you do with it? Because no one's expensive. So that's the problem with the price, and that is why you're seeing so much of the set. There'll always be a template, right? 100%. But that's why you're seeing this midfield over and over, because how do you spend the money? And most FPL managers do not want a deep bench, so it doesn't even help that regard either.
Yeah. Emre asks Odegaard over Martinelli. We've covered that. But
although I felt like Andy was a little bit still not completely convinced. Are you completely convinced on Martinelli over?
I'm convinced enough that he's a good option and that I shouldn't go out of my way to get Odegaard. I think it's one of those where it's quite close, and after 4 weeks, we're saying, well, why do we have Martinelli? He's always going to come off after 70 minutes. And of course, Odegaard was going to play 85, 90. And, he scored loads of goals last year. So that was the wrong move. And it could quite easily go the other way. I think basically it comes down to Martinelli's stats per 90 are better than Saka and Odegaard. But when you put context around that, he doesn't often play as much as the other two. So do you hope that he's got his returns before he comes off? Or do you bank on the extra minutes for the other two, bearing in mind that those minutes could be 95, 100 more regularly than before? That is the decider. I'm on Martinelli right now, mostly because of the 0.5, to be honest. And I feel like that's one of the positions like Fernandes where I could just move off it later anyway, so I'm a little bit less worried. But I think today is exactly what's going to happen. If Trossard doesn't start as the 9, there is every chance he just comes on for Martinelli during the second half. Most matches.
Yeah, agree.
I think we're there.
It's easy. Easy game, isn't it? We're all settled.
5 days to go. You're there. You're basically there, Andy. I think there's a bit more tinkering for myself and for Baker, but I think by Wednesday, Thursday, I think we need to be prepared, because with going to Fest and stuff, it could be a bit chaotic trying to make sure we've got a couple of 2 or 3 drafts that we're comfortable with, knowing that, like, what are the permutations of press conference information? What are the permutations of leaks, etc., etc.? So that could be fun.
It could be fun.
It's definitely going to be leaks. It's Man City, isn't it?
It's Man City.
Here's the question for Man City is, what if Foden and Alvarez both start? Would that change your mind? Or would you just think, well, that's all well and good for game week 1, but what about game week 2? What about game week 3?
I think I'm in that. I think I'm swaying to that side.
As in leaving them out even if they start?
Yeah, probably on the Foden bit, just because of how good Madison was. That if I'm going to go 7.5, I really struggle to think that. I do genuinely struggle to think that Foden outscores Madison this season, just and at any stretch of games. I just think he was genuinely that good. The question is he worth spending the extra $1 million? And what do I have to do to get that $1 million? And is it better than Martinelli?
Yeah,
and that's it's that's the tough part for me on that space. And then I can't see me compromising on Watkins. I just think they were too good. I think that was so good last night, and it was so good that I would kick myself on Watkins. I genuinely think there's a chance that I heard, again, quite our FML guys, but I heard Walsh mention a while ago about Watkins captain in game week 2, and I was like, mate, like, if Haaland's not playing, it's genuinely not a terrible shout at all. It's not a bad shout at all.
Yeah, but if you haven't got Salah, because Arsenal and Man United are both away. Obviously, Man United are playing your boys. Arsenal against Palace. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's genuinely not a terrible shout. But then also, we conceded against Lion City Sailors, mate. Like, Rashford is not a bad shout at all.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I don't see myself doing it. And the same issue I have with João Pedro, similar to Alvarez, is that you're actually buying out a position. You should call it what it is. Like they're not strikers. He was the support striker. They're support strikers that spend a lot of time actually towards the left, towards the right. Like, João Pedro has the bonus that he has penalties. And then I'm like, I'd rather I think I'd still rather punt on João Pedro than Alvarez, even if I know Alvarez was starting.
Yeah, fair enough.
Excellent. Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining us this evening. You can go and have a rest. I don't know how long you were streaming for earlier, but that must be close to 3 hours now for you today. So well-deserved rest for you.
Roast chicken in between.
Life,
you got the protein, mate. You got the protein
Will
going.
help him out, definitely.
Good, yeah.
Definitely. And thank you to everyone in the chat. It's a busier chat than we're used to. So maybe you're not caught up on everything, but hopefully we've been able to answer most of your questions through conversation. And we'll be back again next Sunday. If you've enjoyed today, make sure you drop a like on the way out. We really do appreciate it. 850 of you in at the moment, 213 likes. Let's get it up to 300 before we leave. That'd be great. And subscribe if you want to see more from us. You probably already subscribed to Andy, but if you don't, subscribe to Andy. Let's talk FPL. Some of the best content out there, 100%. And shake your head. It's true. And for anyone that's going to Fest, we will see you there. And let's make a good evening of it. But Andy, if we don't speak to you beforehand, mate, good luck for the start of the season. Enjoy your first deadline stream, and take care, guys.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks.